Hello, friends, and welcome back to Dare Me to Prosper. This is episode 36, I think. And my name is Avery, and I'm your host. And today we're talking about how everybody is psychic. You're psychic. I'm psychic. Your mom is psychic. Your dog is psychic. I'm half joking. But the important thing is we need to talk about this because the narrative in our culture is that a psychic gift is something that only a few people hold. And I have talked about this in many an episode before, and I have an entire course that includes this topic as well in Sensitive to Psychic. But we have been collectively under the impression that not everybody has this ability. We hear the word psychic and we associate it with crystal balls and fortune tellers or tarot cards, and we think we need to outsource that to someone else in order to have access to those gifts. Now, I'm not crapping on seeing a psychic. I see psychics myself, and I offer psychic readings. So this is not something where I'm saying it's never appropriate to look outside of yourself for these gifts. I think just like some of us are really talented at some things while other people haven't practiced those things at all, it's just a scale. It's a matter of how much have you developed this thing that you have access to. Psychic ability is a natural human sense. Just like touch, just like taste, just like sight, everybody has psychic abilities. It's essentially your intuition. That's what it is. Everybody has intuition. Everybody has psychic abilities. Those abilities can be developed by anyone who chooses to pay attention to it. Just like anyone has the ability to learn another language or practice a sport or whatever it is, we all have access to this. It's just a means of what is your strongest way of receiving intuition and have you practiced developing it. As a collective, there are so many areas of our lives where we defer to other people constantly, and we have been conditioned to think that we can't trust our own intuition in so many different areas. Like when we go to the doctor, it's one thing to say, I trust that you know more than I do in this area because you have developed a skill, you went to school, you learned the thing, so I'm going to trust you. That's fine. Where it tends to get problematic, and this is what we do, is we say, I'm going to ignore my own intuition and I'm not going to seek out my own discernment or my own inner knowing. I'm going to put all of my faith in whatever this expert says, no matter how I feel about it. I'm not even going to attempt to tap into my own intuition about this topic. I'm going to defer to this quote unquote expert who has to know more than I do. This is how we have been conditioned to think, is that unless you have a PhD, unless you are an expert in some area, you are not allowed to have opinions about it, or you're not allowed to trust your intuition around that topic. And this is where I really just want to shine a light on and say, we all need to take a step back whenever we are seeking outside information, whether it's like very logical, like a doctor, whether it's a book we're reading, no matter what it is. Oh, politics, that's a big one in this area as well. We are so conditioned to trust and believe blindly what other people say, which is not always a problem. There are certainly experts in certain fields, and there are certainly people who have a lot of wisdom in various areas. But it doesn't mean that you should ignore your own intuition, your own inner knowing, your own ability to access information beyond the physical world and ask your own questions or gain your own insight. So this, I believe, is a really important part of our lives where knowing that you are psychic and you have the ability to develop psychic abilities allows you not just to develop your gifts because it's fun or it's purposeful, but truly it becomes something that you can very practically use in your day-to-day life in a very important way, which is exactly what your psychic senses were designed to do. They're designed to help you navigate life with more clarity. And so we're going to talk about understanding not only that you are psychic, but how to recognize it, how to trust it, and how to strengthen it so that you can integrate it as a big part of your life. Again, if this is something that you are really ready to dive into, I do have an entire course called Sensitive to Psychic that walks through the in-depth, step-by-step process of pinpointing which gifts are strongest for you, how to develop them, how to remove all the fears and blocks around them so that you can actually access the energy without being blocked, practices on how to strengthen each gift, and more. So that's linked in the show notes. It's very in-depth, very step-by-step, and that is perfect for you if you're truly ready to develop these things. Okay, so the first thing I want to touch on is this idea that not everybody is thinking about, but it's this understanding that the spiritual realm is always accessible. I talked about this in my previous episode on spirit guides and ghosts and angels, this idea of the spirit realm, which is such an abstract concept to a lot of people. But essentially, just remember that everything is energy, and so much energy is non-physical, which means that the spirit realm is not some outside, far away, mystical location. It's right here. It's overlapping in our physical world as an energetic dimension. So we are so used to working with the physical, the things that are tangible that we can touch right in front of us. The spirit realm sounds like this really woo-woo concept, but you could very easily define this with science. And it's just the idea that energy is present everywhere in everything, but it's not physical. When I say energy is non-physical, I mean it's not something that you can hold in your hands or measure with your senses like you would if you picked up a rock or if you're looking at a flower. It is the invisible structure that makes up and surrounds everything. So you can think of it like, let's say it this way. Everything that you can touch, see, taste, smell is made out of atoms, okay? Atoms themselves are mostly empty space. But this is how you understand energy being non-physical, but everything needing energy to exist, okay? So everything's made up of atoms. It's got like protons, neutrons, electrons. And all of those things are packets of energy moving in patterns inside of the atom. I'm sure we all learned this in like 8th grade, but you probably forgot just like I did. So I'm trying to break it down in a really simple way. So when you touch something, like a table, you're not really touching solid matter, like it's not energy that's solid. You are interacting with organized energy that's kind of condensed into this single physical item. Okay, so another way to think of this is kind of like electricity in your house. You can't hold electricity, you can't pour it in a jar or put it in a box, right? It's invisible and it's non-physical, but without it, your lights, your appliances, your electronics, none of that stuff would work. It wouldn't function. So energy is kind of like that in the physical world. Energy is the power source and the blueprint that holds everything together, but it's non-physical, okay? So to wrap it all up, energy is invisible. It's the blueprint of everything that you can touch. Matter is basically just energy that is slowed down enough for you to see it. And without energy, the physical world wouldn't exist. Does that make sense? I'm not a scientist, and I really hope I'm explaining this well and broken down enough for you to understand. But it's important as we talk about understanding the spirit realm that you understand why I'm talking about how the spiritual realm exists like right here with you, right around you at any given moment. It's overlapping with all of your physical that already exists right here. So oftentimes it's easy to think of like heaven, for example, or the spiritual realm as this far away thing. It's not. It's overlapping with the current reality that you're living in right now. So when you are tapping into a psychic sense, you are tapping into the energy that is right here with you at all times. It's a place where your higher self, your spirit guides, the universe, source, God, whatever, are communicating constantly. Think of it like a radio station, and I've talked about this again in many, many episodes. Think of energy like a radio station that is always broadcasting, and the only reason why you might not hear the radio signal is because you haven't turned your dial to the right frequency. But once you learn how to shift that dial to the right station, the right frequency, you will notice that all of a sudden you can tune into it. It's been here the whole time. You just really weren't paying attention. So let's talk about how psychic information actually works, because it doesn't come from like some booming voice in the sky. You know, so often we are made to think that anybody who has a psychic gift, so to speak, or anybody who is a strong psychic is hearing like these loud booming voices in their head. That's not how it works. It always goes back to your intuition and how strong your intuition comes in. So it's always coming in initially kind of like through your subconscious, through your body as a vessel, through your senses even, and it can appear in your mind as like flashes of images or words or a feeling. If you're very empathic and very clairsentient, you can get emotions as communicated messages, or claircognizance, like a sudden knowing without explanation. And developing a psychic sense is just practicing witnessing these things come in, and you're practicing breaking them down and understanding what these things mean and what is trying to be communicated. Now, when it comes to being psychic in terms of looking forward into the future, which is how we oftentimes think of psychic, which it's not always the future. It can very much, you can read the energy of the future, you can read the energy of the present, of the past, because again, outside of our physical world, there is no time. There is no linear time in the way that we think about it. I've also mentioned this in other podcast episodes. It's another very confusing topic, but just stay with me. When we come into the physical realm of Earth, we function on a linear time system. Outside of this physical realm, in the spiritual realm, the time does not exist. So when you are tuning into that spiritual realm, you have access to the present, the past, the future, as we see it from our own physical perspective, having a future and a past. In the spiritual realm, that is all happening at the same time. It's almost like one of those, I don't know if you guys ever read those Goosebump books. This is so millennial. Those Goosebump books when you were maybe like elementary, middle school, and it was like a choose your own adventure thing. And so you would read and then you could pick which option you wanted to happen next, and you would go to that chapter and blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like our life is one of those books. And at any point, you could go backwards, you can go forwards, you can look at where you are right now. And there's multiple possibilities and multiple timelines based on the choices that you're making at any given point. It's kind of like tuning into your psychic senses is stepping out of the physical for a minute and looking at the whole book itself and thinking, what do I want to look at? Do I want to go back here and look at the beginning? Do I want to go look into these future possibilities? Because remember, everything about the future is a possibility. Any reading that any psychic gives or any psychic information that you receive is always only a possibility. There is no such thing as a locked in future prediction because you always have free will. And your life is constantly a choose your adventure style book. So there's no such thing as this is absolutely going to happen. When you get a psychic reading or when you tune into psychic information of the future specifically, what you're doing is you're tuning into the most likely outcome or the strongest energetic outcome at that point in time. So the further out you get, the less locked in that possibility is, because all the decisions that you make between now and whenever this prediction is going to happen, the more chances you have to choose different paths or to, and it could be something wildly different or it can be just like a subtle shift, but you always have free will and things are always changing. So just keep that in mind when you are tapping into your own psychic energy, or if you get an energetic reading, a psychic reading from someone else about the future specifically. It's always a possibility based on your current energy. So let's talk about developing it. Like, how do you access this? How do you tune into it? How do you develop it? One thing, again, that I talk a lot about in detail in the course that is important to understand is that you can have blocks that are getting in the way of you really accessing your intuition and therefore your spiritual gifts. And these blocks can come from all sorts of things. They can come from trauma, emotional trauma. They can come from just your general beliefs, like your programming that says that I don't have psychic abilities. I could never tap into this sort of thing. Doubt can be a block. There's all sorts of things and reasons that you could be sort of cut off from the ability to access that information. Think of it as like rocks stuck in a pipe, right? You might get trickles of water that come through. You're getting a little bit here and there, but until you fully remove those rocks, it's always going to be muffled. It's always going to be kind of clogged up. Plus, we've been conditioned in our societies that logical thinking is always prioritized over intuition, which is why, again, I go back to we are always seeking out these experts and we take everything they say blindly without ever considering our own intuition, because we have been programmed to always believe logical and pretty much ignore our own inner knowing. Hey friends, really quick, if you have been resonating with this conversation and you are ready to go deeper into this work, I want to offer a few ways that you can do that. First, if you want to stay really close to the energy of these conversations and be a part of something a little bit more intimate, juicy, behind the scenes, I want to invite you to my Patreon community. For $5 a month, you get an extra episode every week, and these episodes are raw, personal, and full of the kind of truth that we don't always get to have in our day-to-day lives. This is where we cover the more taboo, juicier topics, dive more into relationships, and I share more raw and personal details than you'll find here on the main feed. Then for $22 a month, you get everything in that $5 tier, plus a live psychic reading every single month, a bonus monthly teaching on a particular topic, really steep discounts on all of my programs, and one member gets a free personal reading every single month. So if you really want to get that more one-on-one attention and dive into the topics, this tier is for you. You can join at any time. Just head to patreon.com/dareMeToProsper, and it's all linked in the show notes. Also, if you know that you're intuitive, but still don't fully trust your gifts, or you're second guessing the clarity that you do have, my course on spiritual gifts was made for you. Sensitive to Psychic will teach you how to confidently recognize your gifts, use them in your actual life, and stop outsourcing all of your inner knowledge to people who don't understand your path. It's about reconnecting with that quiet, powerful voice within you that already knows what's true and learning how to follow it without hesitation. Because the truth is, your spiritual gifts aren't just here to help others. They're here to help you live the life you came here for, the one that is aligned, expansive, deeply fulfilling, the one you've always felt was possible, but felt like it was just out of reach. So I will teach you step by step how to unblock all of your fears and stuck energy that are holding you back and step into the intuitive and gifted version of yourself that is aligned to your highest, most abundant, and purpose-filled potential. If you hear this, you'll know it's for you. It's called Sensitive to Psychic, and that is also linked in the show notes. And finally, if you want some personal clarity and you're feeling pulled, I offer psychic readings to support you in your moments of transition, uncertainty, or spiritual awakening. These readings are grounded and honest. They come with voice notes so you can re-listen to them anytime and receive clarity on your questions and your doubts. So if you want a psychic reading from me personally and you want to work together, you can find the links to this and everything else I've discussed in the show notes below. And if you've been loving the show, I'd love it if you left a quick rating or review. It helps more people find these conversations when they need them the most, and I appreciate it so much. Okay, let's get back to the show. Because we have been programmed to always believe logical and pretty much ignore our own inner knowing. When in reality, it's really the dance of holding both, especially while you're really learning to train and hone in on your intuition. But the stronger that your intuition gets, the more weight you can give it, the more power you can put into your intuition and trusting yourself and trusting your own inner knowing, and you can lean less on logical thinking only. It doesn't mean that we become illogical and just stop logical thinking altogether, but it means that you have access to a lot more absolute truth and knowledge and knowing than you give yourself credit for, because that's not the way our society has functioned. And you strengthen that through consistent use. So just like a muscle that grows stronger with regular workouts, every time you practice tuning into your intuition, every time you practice trusting it without doubt, especially when you act on it, you're reinforcing that connection. You are connecting with your intuition and you're telling your body, I trust this. I trust myself. Now, the logical part comes in where you don't go jump off a cliff because you think that you heard a voice in your head that said go jump off a cliff, but you're starting to engage your intuition as you make decisions throughout your life. Start with small decisions. Something as small as, what is my body craving today? Like, what is my intuition telling me that my body needs nutrition-wise that could help me make better choices today? And you can eventually move into things that, are more important. Like, which direction do I want to take my life right now? What city do I want to move to? Do I need to break off this relationship, or is this something that has the potential to be healthy? In these areas, so often we only rely on what we can find logically to make these decisions, which leaves out a huge, vast resource of knowledge that resides within our intuition. I think for a lot of people that just seems too easy. Like, they think it's got to be this complicated, really in-depth process. It's really just practice. You already have this ability. You just need to start using it. Practice using it. Don't be afraid of it. Try to trust it. Start with the small things, and also things like meditation or energy clearing or journaling or just spending quiet time in nature. Any time that you really clear out all of the mental chatter going on in your mind makes it easier for you to hear that inner voice. And you will notice over time that your guidance comes through faster and feels more specific. And I think that's what people don't expect. And I just want to say, you just need to try it. Just start. If you are not someone that meditates regularly, start meditating regularly. And I need to do an entire podcast episode on this, but meditation and the practice of clearing out your mind and the practice of connecting with the spirit realm, with the divine, with your guides, with whatever you intend to connect with, it's almost like, I don't know why this is what comes to mind. It's almost like a clogged artery where, again, it's like the rocks in the pipe. It's a clogged artery. Same sort of scenario, right? You have a line where things are flowing that is blocked, clogged, and things are not moving as thoroughly or as quick as they could be. Every time that you intentionally tune into it, whether it's through meditation or whether it's just through a quiet moment, it gets a little bit bigger. It gets a little bit more unclogged. It gets a little bit stronger. And genuinely, if you're not somebody that has practiced this, I think you will be surprised. I think you should do it just purely for the shock factor, quite honestly. And remember, I'm not going to go into this super in depth because I have a whole course on this, but we all have access to psychic senses. However, each of us has different ways that are more natural, that are more easily accessible than others. Just like some people are born who are natural artists or natural athletes. Each of us comes in to our lifetime with naturally inclined ways of accessing our intuition. So I have very strong, claircognizant intuition. I tend to have instant knowings of things. I'm very empathic in the sense that I'm very, very, very sensitive to energy, and I do a lot of transmuting without even recognizing that it's happening. You could be a really strong clairvoyant, meaning you see a lot of images. Like imagery is a main way that you receive intuitive guidance. Clairaudience, clear hearing. It can be literal, like you could hear with your ears, or it could be kind of like hearing a voice, a word, a sentence, some sort of information in your head, a song that pops into your head that you haven't heard. It just comes out of nowhere. Okay? All of these things are different avenues to access your intuition. And some of them might be easier to access for you than others. It's kind of like there's, a bunch of different bridges that people could take to access their intuition, but some people have better access to this bridge and some people have better access to that bridge. It's just a means to get to the other side and what means you have the easiest access to. Okay, so let's go over really quick signs that you're receiving a true psychic download, because again, we get this type of information all the time. You've been getting this sort of information your entire life. You just probably didn't understand what was happening. You didn't think anything of it. You thought it was a passing thought, or you just thought it's a gut feeling, which it is a gut feeling. But it helps when you have an understanding of, oh, that was an intuitive message and not just a random thought I had. So psychic downloads, as they're often called, arrive very quickly with a sudden sense of clarity or a sudden sense of certainty that bypasses logical reasoning. Kind of like, have you ever noticed where sometimes you're thinking things in your head and you go from logical thought to logical thought to logical thought to end thought, right? That's how our natural processing in our brain works. However, I know we've all had moments where you didn't have any logical thoughts that got you to this end result, this end thought. All of a sudden, it's just like something was dropped into your mind. Oh, here you go. You have this information now. And now I can recognize, for example, oh, that was an intuitive message. I didn't think myself there. It just came in. There was no logical reasoning to get me to this place. I just knew it instantly. It's a fully formed thought. That is an example of a psychic intuitive message, a psychic download, rather than something that you created from your brain. Oftentimes also, these moments will be accompanied by a physical sensation, like a tingling on your skin or pressure at the crown of your head, or maybe your forehead kind of tingles, like that would be a sign of your third eye being accessed. You could just have like a rush of warmth throughout your body, or a feeling of expansion, or a sudden change in your breathing. They're very, very, very subtle. So unless you're looking for them or paying attention to them, it's very likely that you ignore them, especially if you're not someone who is super sensitive to what's going on in your body or different sensations that you have. But again, if you know that this is how it works, if you know that this is something that can happen, and you start paying attention to it, all of a sudden you'll notice, oh, there it is. There's the tingling in my forehead. There's the shiver down my spine. There's my body getting chills, the warmth, the rush throughout my body. All of these become little cues that let you know that the information is coming from a higher frequency and not just a random thought. Because the reason that that happens, and again, I talk about this a lot, where for me personally, I've always been super sensitive in my like physical body. And so I notice everything to the point where it's like I think I'm dying, and really I just like had this really, really subtle physical symptom that other people would probably brush off. I just feel everything really strongly. And again, the more you tune into it, the more sensitive you'll become to it. But these are signs of energy shifting within your body, because when you change the frequency of your physical body from one frequency to another, from one vibration to another, it's kind of like your body does this internal shift. And when that happens, it's almost like changing gears in a car, where your body goes, oh, here we go. Like we're shifting to a different frequency. And so you might have a physical reaction to that. For me, I have like this weird, like chills shake, and other people might, again, feel a change in their breathing, or they might get hot or cold. It's totally individual, but it just lets you know, again, that the information is coming from a higher frequency and not your random thoughts. Also, just a reminder of how psychic insight differs from imagination, because a lot of people have this question, like, how do I know I'm not making it up? How do I know I'm not just like daydreaming? One, again, because even daydreaming or imagination is going from one thought to another thought to another thought, where you are kind of linking thoughts or ideas or pictures together and developing it on your own trajectory. True psychic insight, again, often comes in on its own. It feels very calm, very grounded, very matter of fact. Also, and this is really fun when it happens, but another sign of like authentic psychic insights is when you get information to details that you would not have known logically, but that later prove to be correct. And this is something that I like to tell people: start practicing back-checking your intuitive thoughts. Like, do it with something small. Something like, I am going to intuitively tune into whether there's going to be a lot of traffic on this road today. I'm going to intuitively tune into whether or not this person's going to pick up the phone. Like stuff that doesn't really matter, but you can just practice tuning in and just seeing what happens. Now, do not expect to go in and be right about everything, okay? Psychic ability is just like anything else. You're practicing it. You're not going to get it perfect every time. And again, the further out you go, the less likely you are to be accurate, because timelines and future, they're always changing. So that also will influence this. But just start practicing with little things, just for fun, just to test and get used to picking up on things. Because when you start to track these instances over time, when you see your track record, you'll start to build a more unshakable trust in your own abilities. So write them down or keep a note in your phone, and maybe just every day try to think, I wonder what color shirt this person will be wearing. Let's try to tune into that. And every time you ask a question, you're going within, you're quieting your mind, and just notice the very first thought, the very first image, the very first feeling that comes through, and just trust it. Don't overthink it. Don't second guess it. Just trust it. If it's wrong, no big deal. We're learning. That's going to happen. But keep track. And over time, if you are actively working on it and trusting it and removing the doubts, removing the blocks, you will see patterns emerge. And you'll be able to see how often your intuition proves accurate. And this will reinforce your trust in yourself, and therefore it will reinforce your skill. But the biggest thing to remember here is that everyone has this ability. It is a natural human sense. And it's not about becoming some, celebrity level psychic where you need to be able to tune into everything at any time. It's just about accessing this part of you that's always been there and that is accessible to you, to add guidance and to add clarity to your own life, your own choices, your own purpose. So I'm going to end this episode here. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure that you leave a review. Please leave a review. Please leave a review. I love you guys. I'm thankful for you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.